We began talking a lot about presidential powers and war powers a couple of weeks ago when the United States decided, with no debate in Congress, let alone a vote in Congress, to just start bombing Yemen, as though the president could just wake up one day and decide, hey, I think we should go bomb this country. And what we urged people in our audience to think about, even if you believe that what the Houthis are doing in attacking commercial shipping in the Red Sea in retaliation for the countries that they believe are responsible for the destruction of Yemen, even if you believe that that bombing is justified, to think about the reasons why it's so important still for Joe Biden not to be able to start new wars or bomb new countries, absent emergencies that are not applicable here without first going to Congress. And one of the things we warned is that this is very likely to start escalating. And that is exactly what happened. There is not just escalation when it comes to bombing Yemen, but in the last month, Joe Biden has also bombed Syria and bombed Iraq, a constant tit for tat that is rising in seriousness with various militias affiliated with Iran. One of the things we had agreed on as a nation, and polls showed this, was we were tired of Middle East wars. And yet it seems as though the things that are certain in life are not just death and taxes, but also that the United States ends up bombing multiple countries in the Middle East at once. Here's the New York Times warning of the dangers as U.S. and militias engage. White House worries about a tipping point. Quote, the number of attacks on American troops in the Middle East increases the risk of death, a red line that could lead to a wider war. Now remember, all of this is happening because of the decision of the United States to fund and support Israel. This is yet another cost of our decision to tie ourselves at the hip to Israel. That is what all of this is about. The Yemenis were not attacking ships in the Red Sea until the Israelis were destroying Gaza. There was most of these conflicts fully under control, and they only started escalating as a result of anger and unrest in the region toward Israel that then spills over to the United States because of the vital role we're playing in enabling that war. The New York Times goes on, quote, the assault on American troops based at Al-Assad Air Base in western Iraq. Why do we still have military bases in Iraq and Syria? On Saturday night was by one measure the most successful, believed to carry it out by a militia sponsored by Iran since the Hamas terrorist attack on Israel on October 7th. 2 out of an estimated 17 rockets and short-range ballistic missile fired at the base made it through air defense systems. An unspecified number of American military personnel were reported injured, but none were said to have been killed. But it was just the latest in a regular string of relatively low-level assaults that had become a way of life in the Middle East for U.S. forces since the Hamas attack. As of Thursday, Iranian-backed militias had carried out 140 attacks on American troops in Iraq and Syria. Again, why are there American troops in Iraq and Syria? With nearly 70 U.S. personnel wounded, some of them suffering traumatic brain injuries. All but a few have been able to return to duty in short order, according to the Pentagon. Here's from NPR, January 22nd. The U.S. and U.K. bomb more Houthi sites in Yemen. Quote, the U.S. and British militaries bombed multiple targets in 8 locations used by the Iranian-backed Houthis in Yemen on Monday night. The second time the two allies have conducted coordinated retaliatory strikes on an array of the rebels' missile launching capabilities. Before we get to our guest, who I am very excited to talk to because he is the head of one of the most important foreign policy activist groups in D.C., I just want to quickly show you, as the setup for the interview, the exchange that happened with the Pentagon Press Secretary Pat Ryder at the Pentagon on January 23rd, where he was essentially asked, we're bombing all these countries, it's escalating, aren't we in a new war in the Middle East? And listen to what he said.
The UN Secretary General just now is talking about the conflict in the Middle East. He's mentioning the Houthis, he's mentioning the US and the UK strikes, he's mentioning what's going on with striking in Iraq, both Israelis and the United States, and he's urging all parties to step back from the brink and to consider the horrendous human cost of a regional conflict. What's the Pentagon's response to that?
Well, Carla, we've been working for a very long time on regional security and stability, not only in the Middle East, but around the world. And so we'll continue to work very closely with allies and partners globally to address tensions in the Middle East. You know, since Hamas's attack against Israel, of course, we've been very focused on deterrence and on preventing a wider regional conflict, and we'll stay focused on that.
And what about his words on the brink? Is the U.S. on the brink of war right now in the Middle East?
We are not at war in the Middle East. Clearly, there are significant tensions in the Middle East. And again, we're working closely with allies and partners to de-escalate and reduce those tensions where we can, recognizing the fact that, others have a vote as well.
Now, this is one of the things I've tried to explain before, that when you live outside the United States, you realize how ridiculous it is to have a government that is regularly bombing multiple countries and at the same time standing up and saying, no, we're not at war. I mean, bombing countries is the definitive act of war, along with invading the countries with troops. And yet the United States is so constantly bombing other countries in a way that no other country gets close to, that we've had to raise the bar of what a war is so that we can constantly deny we're at war, even though for 95% of the countries on the earth, if you started bombing other countries, it would be not only an extraordinary event, but obviously it would be preposterous to stand up and saying, hey, we want you to know we're bombing this other country, but we're not at war with them. It's basically a self-negating concept. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.